Well, the other day we talked about the possibility of a general strike in Alberta. Those aren't things that happen in Canada a lot. There was a general strike in Winnipeg about a century ago. My research tells me the last general strike in Canada was actually in 1976, almost 50 years ago. And funny enough, it was about wage and price controls imposed by Pierre Trudeau. Now, if I've missed a general strike out there, let me know. But the idea seems so old-fashioned and sort of, well, a little communist. The idea that everyone would strike in general disgust, I suppose that's sort of a in emergency press the red button, like a fire alarm that you pull. I suppose it is like an emergency button. And if things got to that stage, maybe it's a sign that democracy is off the rails. But in this case, it's the Alberta Teachers Union who, having been offered the highest wages in Western Canada, want a little bit more and want a little bit of political control in the classrooms. Well, I was delighted to read in the Edmonton Journal just today an article by LORNE GUNTER entitled "General Strike Very Unlikely, but UCP Could Survive One." I read the article very carefully, and it also suggests that the UCP might not survive one. Joining me now is the author of this article, our friend LORNE GUNTER, who joins us via Zoom. LORNE, great to see you again. Thanks for taking the time.
Good to see you.
I read your piece, and you thought there was a chance that there's enough burning anger there, but I don't know. Like, would other unions break their agreements? Would private sector unions care at all? Like, what do you think would happen?
I don't think so. I think if you tried to get, say, pipe fitters or unionized plumbers to go out of work, off of work to support the teachers' demands, you'd be really hard pressed to find any of them who would. Why would they give up a paycheck to go and help teachers who are going to get a 17% raise, most of them, out of this deal? And really what they're fighting over is the use of the notwithstanding clause in the back to work legislation. So that might animate some other unions, but it's a pretty obscure reason to go out on a strike. So I'm not confident that. And besides, the Alberta Federation of Labor, which is behind the general strike talk, has now a 2-point plan in place before they would do a general strike. Well, a general strike has to come when the anger is there. Yeah. It's got to be immediate. If they're not out on strike within about 10 days, they're not going.
Yeah.
So and the AFL says, well, we want you to go and start recall petitions against UCP MLAs, and we like you to volunteer for the opposition parties and work for them to get rid of the UCP. Oh, that's not 2 weeks from now. So I don't think a general strike is going to happen.
Huh. So the notwithstanding clause was invoked for the right to strike, but has it also been used, and perhaps I misunderstood this, it seems to me that a lot of teachers and the NDP and the Alberta Federation of Labor, they also don't like a particular ideology, Danielle Smith, on transgenderism. Have I conflated the two issues? Because it seemed to me that one of the things that teachers were really dead set against was Danielle Smith having some say about what books were in libraries and maybe even gay straight alliance clubs. Have I inadvertently confused the two issues?
No, but the second part didn't come up much in labor negotiations.
Okay.
So it is a problem. There are a lot of teachers who are upset with the provincial government's policy, which says if a student wants to change pronouns at school, you have to notify the parents, and you're not allowed to start pushing puberty blockers and things for people under 16. Right. So there was some pushback on that a few months ago, but I think that the heat has come out of that for a while. But the province has talked about using the notwithstanding clause on that too. So there's a general concern that the notwithstanding clause is going to be used more often. And therefore, the province is going to step on fashionable progressive rights. And so the union leadership with the ATA, and to some extent the AFL, doesn't like that. And so they want to see that curtailed. But there's a very fascinating study by a couple of academics in Ontario It said that up to 2014, only 30% of provincial laws that went to the Supreme Court were overturned on constitutional grounds. Since then, over 60% have been overturned. And so the provinces are getting tired of watching the Supreme Court dismantle that legislation.
Right.
Notwithstanding clause was put in the charter specifically to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so now more of them are starting to use it.
Yeah. And, I just can't think of anything more removed from everyday ordinary life for most severely normal people. I mean, when you say notwithstanding clause, first of all, those two words, what does that even mean? Like, I think a lot of people, their eyes will start to close and have a nap. And I'm not looking down on anyone. I'm just saying it's such an abstract technical thing. And even if you explain it to people, I don't think people are outraged by it. I mean, I know the fancy people, oh, well, of course you're against the notwithstanding clause. It's an attack on democracy. But if someone says, well, what is it again? Oh, it allows the legislature to not be overturned for a period of 5 years, but they have to, like, it's so inoffensive. I don't know. I just don't see that as motivating people. I don't see it.
And I think the one thing that people have to remember is that if it weren't for the notwithstanding clause, there would be no charter.
Right.
Because there were 6 provinces at the time of charter negotiations in 81, 82 who didn't want the charter. And they only agreed to allow it to go ahead with the notwithstanding clause, because it also includes earlier in the document the right for judicial review, which had not been an enumerated right in Canada before that. But it says judges have the right to invalidate laws based on constitutional grounds. And so the 6 provinces said, look, you can do that. We need to have something to counterbalance it. So put the notwithstanding clause in.
Yeah. Well, I think it should be so normalized. My own view is that the notwithstanding clause should be added in like salt and pepper in just to almost every dish, just to get over this weird fake taboo. And let me switch gears, if I may. I really appreciate your info on the province, but I want to switch gears just for 1 second to an example of where I think the notwithstanding clause it was designed for this moment. Earlier today, Lorne, the Supreme Court of Canada came out with a ruling striking down Stephen Harper, I think it was Stephen Harper's, policies on mandatory minimum sentences for child pornography. And it was a 5-4 ruling. So 9 judges, if just one of them had gone the other way, the mandatory minimum would have been upheld. So basically one human being, one judge, and I bet you not 1 in 100 Canadians could name all 9 Supreme Court judges. I'd be pressed to do it.
I bet you it wasn't 1 in 100,000.
Yeah. I mean, we probably know more American Supreme Court judges because they're in the news more. So one unelected judge that no one could even name, it's one person, or you could say 9 people. You could say 9 people have made a decision that in my bones, I know 90% of Canadians are against. And what are you going to do? The notwithstanding clause would say, we're going to judge proof this law for at least 5 years. And so I think that the Liberals now have a choice to make federally. Do they use the notwithstanding clause to preserve this mandatory minimum sentence for child pornography?
No, they don't. Because on another matter that's before the court, on Quebec's Bill 21, which is the secular law that, no public servant or teacher or police officer can wear a turban, a hijab, a kippah, a cross. The feds are there fighting at the Supreme Court to have the notwithstanding clause nullified. So they're not going to use the notwithstanding clause on this bill.
Right.
And Carney has said many times that he thinks the notwithstanding clause is anti-democratic. No, it's precisely the opposite.
Yeah.
You have elected officials in every province and nationally who should have the last say.
Yeah.
They shouldn't do it willy-nilly. They shouldn't do it trivially, but they should have the last say because they have the mandate from the people in order to change these things. Yeah. But that decision at the Supreme Court is weird because the case before the court was 2 men from Quebec who pleaded guilty to being in possession of child pornography that showed violent acts being done on children as young as 3. And the Supreme Court, that's cruel and unusual punishment to give them a 1-year minimum. Give them a 5-year minimum. I mean, it seems so obnoxious to me what they were doing that they should go away for a very long time. But the court's reasoning was, well, technically, if an 18-year-old had a salacious picture of his 17-year-old girlfriend on his phone, he might be considered to be in possession of child pornography. And so because of that hypothetical, we think that the minimum is unconstitutional. Well, first of all, there aren't many provinces that are going to tell their crown prosecutors to prosecute an 18-year-old boy because he's got a salacious, titillating picture of his girlfriend on his phone. And the consent laws in Canada clearly say that you can have sexual activity with underage people if they are consenting and there is no relationship. You're not their guardian. You're not their boss. You have no authority over them. You're not a coach. None of those things. And so the hypothetical that the court came up with is ridiculous.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I tell you, that is a crazy case for anyone to die on. Mm-hmm. And it'll be amazing. I think you're right. I think the Liberals will not use the notwithstanding clause because of this other attempt they have to denude the Constitution of that clause. You know, I forget who it was who once used this phrase with me, and it really clicked. All decisions will be decided by vote. The question is it a vote of 9 people in a court? Will it be a vote of 340 people in Parliament? Or will it be a vote of millions of people in an election? It will be a vote. The question is how democratic or how elite will it be? I don't know. There's some wiggle room in that idea, but I sort of thought, yeah. I mean, basically, these 9 super citizens think that by a 1-vote margin, they're going to strike down, as you say, quite a lenient mandatory minimum. I don't know. I think I've just seen the reaction to that ruling so far, and it's shocking to me.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we'll see what comes next. So I want to ask you one last question before you go. I should have asked it before we switched over to the federal scene. In your article, you mentioned it about 10 minutes ago today, that one of the things in Alberta they're looking to do is have MLA recall. That in Alberta, you can actually get a petition, and if you get a certain number of votes, you can force a special election, a by-election. And I think that's great. And if I'm not mistaken, Danielle Smith has lowered the hurdles for these because Jason Kenney had them absurdly high. I'd have to check that to know for sure. Do you think there are any conservative MLAs who are at risk? Because my understanding of the map is most conservatives are in fairly friendly territory. Edmonton was basically a desert for them, and that this is basically an empty threat. You tell me if I'm wrong. I couldn't tell you how all 83 or whatever number of the MLAs are, but is it an empty threat?
It's going to be really hard for them to get a recall vote on any MLA because the standard is still fairly high. You have to get 60% of the number of people who voted in the last election. Now, it doesn't have to be 60% of the people who voted. You don't have to go and find all the names on the electors list and make sure that these people are now signing a petition. It gives me 60%, but the people have to be living in the riding.
Yeah.
And they have to be over 18. And, so it's going to be tricky to do it. There's already a recall petition that's been accepted by Elections Alberta against the education minister. And it was started by a dissident teacher. And but they said to her, okay, well, we're going to accept that this is a valid recall question, but you now have to get a petition with 16,000 signatures on it, all from one riding.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if they can organize that, then maybe they do have a rebellion on their hands. Again, I'm a skeptic, but you never know with Alberta. It's a rambunctious place. Hey, Lorne, great to catch up with you. Thanks for spending so much time with us today.
No worries.
All right, there he is, Lorne Gunter. We've been talking about his article in the Edmonton Journal called General Strike, Very Unlikely, but UCP Could Survive One. Stay with us. Your letters to me next.